The movie begins with a blank black screen and a woman's voice praying in the background, saying the words Yahafizu and begging an entity to answer her prayers. Ominous music plays. The dark screen suddenly ends, and we are greeted with the face of a woman who looks terrified. She moves towards a car and a man comes out of it. These two stranded people are named Alex and Selma. They were traveling back to the airport when their car broke down in the middle of a forest, with no one in sight. Alex seems like an overly positive guy who isn't bothered by their situation, whereas Selma is the total opposite. She feels very scared and is constantly asking her boyfriend to be cautious of everything in their surrounding. Paranoid much, Alex tries calming Selma down and says they should just walk to the nearest town and ask for help. Selma isn't fond of the idea. She says that there are mines all around there, but eventually agrees to Alex's proposition and they set off. Selma is still anxious and keeps on looking all around and constantly reassuring herself by stroking the necklace around her neck. Alex looks at her, worried, and jokes, saying that she may love that necklace more than him. They joke around for a bit and then embrace each other. In search of the nearest town, they move around, and Alex asks Selma to talk about her life with him. He says that she seems so distant and that she never tells him anything. Selma zones out during his speech and feels something strange around them. With cicadas chattering in the background and ominous music, she walks towards an unknown thing that she claims to be present around them. As they venture into the forest, Selma becomes increasingly paranoid and jumpy, seeing things that Alex cannot. She tells Alex that something is there, hiding in the fog, but Alex can't see it. He sees a stranded car nearby and walks towards it. He searches through it, finds a walkie-talkie, and tries to call for help, but to no avail. All the while, Selma is at his heel, telling him anxiously that he will get them in trouble. When he offers her the walkie-talkie to talk, she runs. He goes to her and apologizes. She then tells him about the amulet around her neck that was gifted to her by her father. She tells him that it's her protector and her guardian angel. Right then, Bobby, Alex's dog, starts barking, and he runs to him, leaving Selma alone with her fearful and anxious thoughts. As she clutches the necklace harder and looks around, she feels strange things happening. The area starts to fill with fog, and strange music plays in the background. She fearfully looks around and feels a dark figure following her. The situation is made worse by the fact that the forest is infested with landmines left over from an earlier war. As the movie progresses, Selma becomes convinced that they are being followed by a mysterious force that she believes is connected to her amulet. Terrified, she starts to walk faster and comes across a man. The man shows her the walkie-talkie and says that it belongs to him. As she moves away from him, another man comes from behind and calls her indecently. As she fearfully moves back, the man warns her of landmines and asks her to stop. She then steps on a landmine while the man jumps and captures her, who keeps shouting for help, but then everything goes black. Selma gasps awake and finds herself on the ground in a mess, with Alex near her. He tries to comfort her. Turns out the earlier moment that traumatized Selma was just a fake vision due to her extreme fear and paranoia. She envisioned stepping on a landmine and then being captured and taken advantage of by two men. She finds the two men there talking about Alex's dog. One of them comes over and tells Alex that the dog is barely alive due to stepping on a mine and causing the blast. Since they speak different languages, Alex is unable to understand. Alex sees the man end his dog's life, and he breaks down, shouting at the men to leave the dog alone. Selma shouts at the man to leave Alex alone in Serbian, revealing she understood them, and he looks at her, shocked. He tells her that the dog is already expiring. Alex goes and mourns over his dog's body. Selma asks Alex if they should get out of there without the men. The man hears them talking and comes to offer his help. They are named Milos and Vuk. Due to the language barrier, they can't communicate properly, but they talk using signs. Although Selma knows the language, she still refuses to translate, as she has developed a loathing for the two men after her earlier panic attack. Alex doesn't understand her panic and hate towards them, and agrees to go with them. Due to extreme stress, Selma falls down, and it turns out the landmine blast injured Selma. She passes out. Alex calls 911. While he is on the line, the two men make a bet. The line goes silent, and Alex wigs out and swears at the two men, thinking they can't really understand him. And with that, they respond in English, explaining that they are Serbs. They offer to help his girl. They put Selma on a stretcher and carry her to their post to give her first aid. Alex becomes totally distraught and follows them. A little way further, they stop, and upon inquiring, it turns out they have reached it. The place that they call their post is actually a cave. Alex refuses to take his girlfriend in there, and Milos becomes angry, telling him that he is not on his honeymoon. As the movie progresses, we witness Selma's grip on reality slowly slipping away. When she wakes up, it's apparent that something isn't right. Her eyes dart around with a sense of urgency, as if trying to make sense of her surroundings. Alex rushes to her side and calms her down, but Selma's fears and paranoia continue to grow, escalating to a bone-chilling climax. He tells her everything is all right, and he will take care of her. Just then, a deafening gunshot echoes through the air, and Alex falls to the ground, blood pouring from his chest. Selma is then dragged into the outpost by Vuk and Milos. She keeps shouting for help, but nobody comes to her rescue. We see her getting dragged through the dark, and then dragged further, past piles of corpses and past more Serbian military men. She sees people getting mercilessly eliminated. Gunshots fire like rain in those dark corners, and all Selma can do is sob and cry. She sees her father, who gives his pendant to her, and is then taken away by the men and eliminated. Suddenly everything turns dark, and we see Alex hushing Selma. Turns out, the earlier events were also another false vision. As Selma slowly comes back to reality, she's haunted by the after effects of her earlier episode. Her breaths come in short, sharp gasps, and her face is etched with the unmistakable signs of fear. Alex does his best to comfort her, reminding her that her wound has been treated by the men and that she's safe now. But Selma can't shake off the feeling of unease that seems to be gnawing at her from the inside. She walks towards Milo's and, getting angry, spits in his face. She holds a knife, and when Alex gets angry at her, she lashes out at Alex, telling him that they can't stay there any longer, that they have to leave and get as far away from these men as possible. We come to learn the fact that Selma's entire family was massacred by Serbians. It's clear that Selma's past is much more complicated than anyone could have imagined. It also becomes clear that their trip isn't just a holiday. They were there to bury the bodies of Selma's family, which were found when flooding uncovered their hidden grave. It's a chilling reminder of the atrocities of war and the devastating toll it takes on innocent lives. Selma's pain and trauma, and her hate towards the men, seems quite reasonable now. Selma asks Alex to do something and get them out of there, because he was the one who got them involved with the men. Alex goes out to talk to the men. He apologizes for Selma's behavior, and tells them it's better if they part ways. Buck tells Alex that he can tell him the way out, but only if he pays 10,000 euros first. Alex is dumbfounded. He thought the men were genuinely good and wanted to help them out, but it was not the case. Milos goes inside the cave and fetches a gun. When Alex refuses to pay, they hit him. Selma comes out of the post and finds Milos pointing a gun at Alex. Alex sees her and shouts for her to run. She runs back inside, and instead of just hiding, grabs a knife and carefully walks around inside the post. We see her holding her pendant and chanting. Yahafizu, meanwhile, a black creature stands behind her. As she looks back, she hears Milos. He comes at her and they scuffle. With a swift motion of her hand, Selma slices his neck and continues to charge at him with the knife. She looks back and finds an alien female form. This alien character cuts Milos' head completely off, chanting, Yahafizu. And with the sinister knife in hand, Selma moves around slowly. Just then, Vuk, the other Serb, comes down and begins looking for Milos and Selma. Buck finds Selma and hits her with the back of the gun in his hand. Selma gets up and runs into the dark, getting out of Vuk's sight. The Serb keeps looking for her, with the gun loaded in his hands. He keeps firing into the dark, but Selma has almost vanished. He keeps threatening the girl, and suddenly, as he turns, Selma pushes the knife inside his gut, chanting, Yahafizu. Again, the strange and sinister-looking creature is standing right beside her. Selma then rushes to the wounded Alex's side and helps him up. She informs him that the attackers are gone for good, and that they are safe now. They then proceed to bury the bodies of their attackers. While they're doing it, Alex is shocked to see that Selma has completely decapitated one of the attackers, Milos. Alex becomes disturbed, unable to process who Selma, the woman he's been dating for the past year, really is. Selma finds that she has lost her pendant, and anxiously goes looking for it, but Alex finds it in the pocket of the other attacker, Vuk. Turns out Vuk is still alive, even though he is half buried. Alex reaches for a heavy rock, intent on finishing off their ruthless enemy. But as he lifts the rock to strike, his nerves get the better of him, and he can't bring himself to do it. Selma comes back and picks up the gun to end Vuk's life, but Alex convinces her to do otherwise and goes to fetch a stretcher. Selma looks at Vuk, and all her hate and rage comes pouring out. As Alex comes back, he finds that Selma is bashing Vuk's head in over and over again with a rock. Standing there, looking at the love of his life, who he called a mouse, commit such a ruthless deed must have been earth-shattering for poor Alex. Anyway, Selma looks at him, and we can see the instant regret in her eyes. She says she had to do it, but Alex has had enough. He turns around and runs, hitting a landmine in the process, and the scene cuts out. Despite the terrifying ordeal he's been through, Alex is somehow still alive. In the next scene, we see him and another woman heading to a peaceful picnic in the park, as Alex tries to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. Just as the hope for his future begins, a deafening explosion rips through the park, sending people running for cover. The movie ends with Alex staring at a blur of a woman standing in front of him, with an assault rifle in her hands.